Hey everybody, welcome to Workforce Gaming. I'm Brad here with Doug.
Hi.
We both just finished up God of War. Have done some stuff post game uh,
Yep.
this past week, and we want to talk about it.
We do.
So this is not going to be normally like we do a review. The game is great. Everyone says it's great. We pretty much agree.
Yeah. And I think our first impressions kind of held through till the end.
Yeah,
So
it's a really 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 good game. Not quite that 10 out of 10, but really 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 good.
yeah.
For both of us, I think is kind of where we're sitting. So
Hmm.
we are just going to jump in, talk about some spoilers, talk about the game as a whole.
Yeah.
So we will be going through story spoilers, gameplay spoilers, endings, all that kind of stuff. So if you haven't played God of War, there is a lot of really cool moments in this that if they haven't been spoiled for you yet, hopefully
Yeah.
they don't. So you should turn this off. But
Yeah, just go play that game. It's a very good game.
yes, there's no it. It would be hard for me not to recommend this game to anyone. There's nobody I
Yeah.
could look at and say you wouldn't like this,
Yeah.
which I feel like is fairly rare. But anyway,
Hmm.
from here on out, we're going to talk about spoilers. We're going to give kind of our opinions going through different spoilers and different things like that that's going on. I've said spoilers a lot, so hopefully you know there are spoilers coming.
Hmm.
So to start out with, this is the way that Doug has kind of summarized this game to me like 4 or 5 times with the phrase "small story, big game." So I guess to kind of
Yeah.
start out, I think that's a good encapsulation of what this game is. So what do you mean when you're saying that? Because you've said that multiple times when you're describing this game.
I think when I think of the story of like the new God of War game, it is like they've even like even the developers stress is like it's a story between a father and a son, and they're on a very singular quest to go spread his mother's ashes on the top of a mountain, and like that is about it. Like really, like when you like burn all the story down, like literally that is all it is. Um, and what that allows for is like a really intimate character developments between Kratos, his son, and then the main antagonist and some of the characters along the way. But the problem is the game is like 30 to 40 hours long. So to me, it's a story that I feel like it doesn't quite work in those like really, really long length games because it's a really singular arc
Now
of a
this is where we need.
story.
Now this is where we need to pause for a second
Yeah.
because I think I pretty much critical path this, and I think I hit about 15, 16 hours and I was done.
Well, I don't think you're supposed to do that.
So I think because I think I did get a little bit of that same burnout towards the end of like okay, and we'll talk about that later when you get towards
Yeah.
the end of the game, the way the game kind of keeps progressing along. But I think the story fits in that sense. I think it depends on how much you go exploring, and the game definitely
Yeah.
encourages you to. And I think that's where you get this feeling that this is a giant game, but it is still that very singular, focused game. Even when you're exploring, every time you go exploring, the explanation for it is always, well, we need to get stronger to get through our quest to get to that mountain. And I
Yeah. So
think
like, mhm.
and I think that bigness of the game is always, always, always simplified down to that. We're doing this with our one singular focus. And unlike many other games, that goal never changes. The goal you are
Yeah.
given from the start of the game, when you first see the funeral, is all right, let's go, is the goal that you accomplish at the credits with very little in terms of deviation during the middle.
Yeah, I kind of felt like that's that. Not I'm not saying the character development is like awesome. It's great how they develop together to like complete this goal. But just it just felt like throughout, like I wish I had maybe not a different goal, but like it's just the antagonist stays almost. Let's just say for 99% of the game, the antagonist stays the same. For 99% of the game, your goal is to do this, and then everything in between is like little hiccups along the way of them getting to there. But the hiccups were never to me like story aspects. It was more like character development or just like MacGuffin stuff where it's
Yeah.
like, oh, we got to get this thing now. We got to get this thing now. We got to get this thing now. So as because I had spent, like I said, I spent a lot of time exploring, so it felt like that story was kind of like wearing thin near the end as I'm waiting for something big to explode because a lot of this game has hints of very big things to come. Um,
Yeah.
so
And
I'm
I
just
and I think that's a issue taken with just the fact that this is God of War. Up until
yeah,
now, God of War has big, that crazy, giant, over the top, ridiculous, as crazy as you can get. Whereas this is much more pared down, and it is that smaller story. And I think
yeah,
that almost plays on your expectations a little bit. I know I was feeling that the first few hours of just going like, "Oh my god, this is God of War. When am I going to fight some dude that's the size of a mountain?"
yeah,
And you're just constantly have that kind of like, oh, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. And then you kind of get to a point about halfway through going, okay, no, this is a different God of War. We're not going to get to the god that's the size of the mountain and throws moons at you or whatever nonsense you can come up with.
But the problem is they constantly talk about stuff like that.
Yes.
Like constantly.
Yes. For
every
sure.
like every Mimir story, every like cool tapestry, like hinting at other religions and stuff going on at the same time. Every like there's just so many hints of things to come that I feel like it never really they don't follow through enough just on this game particularly.
Yeah. And I think that kind of transitions well into the main boss fights, which there's a couple of these, which are the Baldur fights. And that's where this game really, to me, kind of picked up. You kind of get your little tutorial thing, and then he shows up knocking on your house in what is one of my favorite, like, opening boss fights. I feel like normally an opening boss fight is just, you're fighting the troll, you're fighting the whatever, and you get that sense of, like, you do in an RPG where, oh, I'm killing so many rats right now, and the first boss doesn't really have that huge impact.
Yeah.
That fight is so intense, where just you're smashing people into mountains, and you're bloody and covered in blood and just beaten to shit. Yeah. And you just stand up and it's like, all right, let's do this. And then he's bloody and beaten to shit, and he's just like, ha ha ha, let's go again. And it's just this crazy back and forth for, I swear that fight lasts about a half hour. It is so intense, and it's just so well done. I think it's just this perfect intro to the game of just going like, okay, like, this is where we're taking this. This is an intense, and it's a personal game because it is up close combat. It's not this far off throwing stuff at anything. It's not this big overblown thing. It's this tiny little personal fight of just two guys just fighting each other, and that's all it is.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because it's like I think Baldur is like an interesting character because he's invincible. It's like the only time, not the only time, but it's like one of the few times I feel like Kratos can be like absolutely 100% ferocious.
Yeah,
is going against that guy because they're invincible. It's like they are like you see Kratos going like match for match. Like this is one of the hardest guys he's ever fought in anything, and it is because of that animation that like those hits like really freaking hurt when they land. And I think it's cool. This is actually I remember like the lead up to this scene, to that fight scene, is like so crazy because you hear the knock at the door and he's like, boy, get under the whatever. And it's like, it feels so intense. And it's just like some like shirtless guy who's quite a bit shorter than him.
Yeah. A little scrawny compared to Kratos.
Yeah. And then I think that first hit when he hits you and you go flying through the house, like over the house and into the backyard sort of thing. It's just like, oh shit.
This isn't just some random quote unquote traveler. This is going a different direction. And again, I think that plays on your sense right away of like, okay, here we are. This is intense. We're getting somewhere big here.
Yeah.
And just those fights continued. And I thought that was an interesting trend that you fight the final boss and the first boss are the same guy. And the fights aren't overly different, but just the scale of the fight going from just the intimate, like outside your front lawn house fight at the beginning to the giant, you're in something's palm, you're on its shoulder. You still have that massive God of War scale, but it really is still that small, intimate fight of just you and Baldur, where Freya and everything is kind of going on around you, but it really is just the two of you still going at it 15 or, in your case, 40 hours later.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, though, is because I think that Baldur fight, though, kind of going back to like expectations for the game, it kind of sets up to me, it kind of set up that sort of false expectations of what this game would be, because that first fight is crazy. It's pretty big. Like for a small fight, it's a pretty big fight because at the end, like they're grappling and they're pushing each other apart and like literally like splitting the earth between them. So like, it's like, oh shit, we're going to have some, if this is the starting fight, man, these fights are going to be humongous. And it really, those boss fights, I think, there's two after that.
The dragon,
and then the final Baldur fight.
Yeah, there's lots of those like mini bosses with like bigger trolls, and there's the dark elf boss. But it is very pared down, and I think that's one of the concerns that I did have with this game kind of coming out of it. And again, I think that maybe plays to expectations of this being a God of War game more as God of War is boss fights. Like the moments that stick out in God of War are those boss fights. And this was lacking it. And I think the Baldur fights though are so good.
Yeah.
That those stick with you so well throughout the game, and the ending fight they stick with you so well that it does make you kind of go, okay, you know what? Like you really honed in on these, and this is a different feeling for this game. Yeah. But there is still that part of me that's like, oh man, I can't wait for some of the things that are hinted at next time.
Yeah.
Where we're gonna go crazy with this, and those are what kind of I think really leave you wanting more there.
Yeah, no, exactly. It was that constant like wanting more sort of thing. I will say though, like regardless of like, yes, they're very few, but like they're definitely memorable fights. Like the three like big like fights, because I feel like the context in which they're placed in, like I can't remember the Hermes fight in God of War 3. Like I know I fought Hermes, but I don't remember it at all. And
Yeah,
like besides the Poseidon fight, like I know you kill a lot of other gods in that one. I don't quite remember how you kill them. But this one, it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna remember that first Baldur fight. I'm gonna remember that awesome dragon fight. I'm gonna remember that final Baldur fight, because they each have like some sort of emotional weight to them.
hmm
That I would say most, even the end of God of War 3, where beating up Zeus, it still didn't even have that culmination of 3 games wasn't as emotional as say that final fight with Baldur, where you realize you actually are hurting him for the first time.
yeah, and I think that's where this game really succeeds is everything's based around characters, and this
Yeah.
game focuses so heavy on characters. Like your feelings told Baldur kind of adjust as the game goes on. Your feelings towards Freya, your feelings towards Atreus. Every character in this game, you see Kratos as kind of that representation of you, changing
Mhm.
their mind about these as you go through. And I think
Yeah.
that character development is this game's strongest suit. And I think we've talked about this a couple times when it comes to games like Final Fantasy 15, Uncharted 4, where
Yeah.
we're seeing this new shift in games, I think, where people are realizing that we're past the days of Master Chief, where your
Yeah. Yeah.
character is just this guy, Marcus Phoenix. Like, you've got the guy with the gun and he says grumpy things, and that's your character. Um, Whereas now we're getting these much more developed characters where Kratos, 10 years ago was just angry guy yelling at gods. Now you've
Yeah.
got Kratos who's angry guy, but you're seeing this other side of Kratos. You're seeing him
Yeah.
evolve as a father. You're seeing him as a husband who's lost his wife. You're seeing him in these different situations, and you
Mhm.
really get a much different feeling for him. And I think you
Yeah.
get a much different feeling for this game because of that. And those smaller boss fights, those fewer boss fights, they feel bigger because you now actually have a connection to that character.
Yeah, no, oh yeah, no, I really, really like Kratos in this one. I think I liked Kratos in the older games because he was sort of that id of like, it makes sense that you have a ferocious character destroying people because you want to have a cool game where you can destroy people and not feel guilty about it.
Yeah.
But in this one, it's like kind of interesting. Like you wouldn't expect God of War to be the one like contextualize all of the anger and all of the destruction and stuff in this game, because he is still Kratos. He is still angry, but it is cool how they kind of contextualize that within the violence of this one, where he is actually, it's really interesting. One thing I really liked about this game was that Kratos talks about like fighting humans versus fighting undead things,
Yeah, and he
and
has
they made that
that
a
weird
major
lesson.
point.
Yeah, with Atreus, and he talks about that weird lesson of like, oh yeah, you've killed a deer, you've killed this other stuff. This is different. Like
Yeah.
we don't just haphazardly do this. These
Yeah.
mystical things, these undead things, go to town.
Yeah.
These are people. Now let's step back.
Yeah.
And it is this
And
weird
it,
feeling for somebody like Kratos, who in the other 3, 6, whatever God of War games, you're pretty much just mowing down whoever's in front of you and without regard for anything.
you kill people for health in those games. Like that
Yeah.
was how. Yeah.
And now there's some meaning behind that, and I think just again that development with Atreus and the way their relationship builds really does put Kratos into a better perspective.
Yeah.
I think as well. I think we covered a lot of Kratos and Atreus's. God, I can't say those names back to back. We covered a lot of their relationship in our first impressions video,
Yeah.
but I think you do, as you go through the game, you do see that natural evolution of those two, and really get a feeling for, okay, this is a real relationship. This is a relationship that, like you saw when you went into the light in the caves, had a lot of strain on it. And through this adventure, through this journey, you're seeing them grow and you're seeing them kind of mend that past relationship. And I think that development that it goes through, just of those two connecting with each other, gives it so much more heart, so much more feeling to every single thing you're doing.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of interesting. There's actually points in the game where they kind of make you not like the characters too, which I thought was kind of
God,
interesting.
The freaking like half hour that Atreus is like the biggest dick in the world.
I was gonna get to that. I was gonna get to that. Well, actually, I was gonna get to that. I think the first thing though with like Kratos is like his relationship at the beginning with Atreus is he's kind of a dick. Like
Oh,
Kratos
completely.
is in the beginning is kind of a jerk because he is so distant from his son. So at first you're not really feeling Kratos because it's like, okay, new game, he's kind of being a little weird with his son and stuff. And he's like, oh, as he grows with his son, you start to like him. And then what you're saying, when Atreus finds out he is God, then you don't like Atreus because Atreus acts like a 12-year-old who just found out he's a god.
Yeah, which is just completely overblown to the point of like, I don't care, we can do whatever. And there's a great line I don't remember the exact line, but there's a great little part there where he says something along the lines of like, why do we got to keep going on this quest? We're gods. Let's just do whatever we want. And it's like,
Yeah,
okay, that's awesome. Just like, yeah, fine, whatever. Forget this quest. And especially when you think like 20 minutes ago, this was this deeply personal quest to you because it's your mom. Like, you're trying to do this. And now you're just like, fuck it. I'm a god. I can do what I want.
yeah, no, because they made him like a fickle 12-year-old. Like that's like an interesting thing to do. Like, could you imagine like if you? I mean, I guess they did with Uncharted 4, making Drake a little unlikable in that one. But like throughout like 1 through 3, like Nathan Drake is like, ha ha, I'm Indiana Jones and I'm so lovable and everything like that. And this one, like, it really felt, because I think because they had the time to do it, they could make it have, so there's periods where like you said, where Atreus is a jerk or Kratos is a jerk, or maybe you don't like Freya, or maybe you don't like Balder. Like, they give you time to like both like these characters, not like these characters, be angry at them, be happy for them. And it's kind of cool sort of going through those like emotional beats that aren't, it's not an emotional roller coaster, because they definitely take their time with these things.
Yeah.
That I really like. Yeah.
Everything feels earned with their relationship. And that's the good, that's what really works, is that when Atreus is acting like a dick, you see that that's earned. That comes from him finding out he's a god. When Kratos is a dick at the beginning, you find out later in the game, okay, he had like zero relationship with this kid.
Yeah.
Until Faye died. There was nothing. He was just there. He was just that dude who lived in the house with me. And now, okay, now I have to be his father. Now I have to take care of him. Every single moment of that is earned in some way in this game. And it's not just going like, we're friends now. And I think we talked about like Mass Effect with the, you gained positive relationship points. You never get that feeling, because throughout the game it's constantly developing. Even with like the hand on the shoulder thing, they used one of the first trailers. Like, you even see that kind of progress as the game goes through, going from like, okay, I'm really distant, to a little bit more comfortable with each other by the time the game ends. There's always that good evolution of that relationship.
Yeah, and I like how the in-game dialogue also sort of changed as the game went along as well. Like it wouldn't be just like after this major story beat, now they're being nicer to each other. You could actually tell like it sort of gradually changes, and that like, you know, like after, it's not even just, I think the one example people like to point to is like the after battle stuff. Like after the battle, he says, "Oh, you did an okay job, you did a bad job, you did a good job," sort of thing. But also just like the general way they talk with each other, and how like that sort of whatever the intermittent dialogue of going around the boat, like they become softer with each other. And I really thought that was really cool.
For sure. And I think that works really well with a couple other characters. The other two kind of main characters here being Freya, and just the way that she evolves, even going from just helpful, like, oh my God, like, let me help you, like, to even seeing her relationship with Balder, her son, and the way that evolves. And then the way that works very differently than Kratos and Atreus' relationship, where at the end it's like this opposite thing of like, okay, like, I loved you, but you hate me. And you get this like weird combination of looking at the two different relationships at the same time. And just the way that she changed over the game, I think was really interesting. And I think worked really well in a game where you only have maybe 8 main characters who really push you through the entirety of this game, versus the, you know, I feel like a lot of other games just start throwing character after character. Every hour you get a new character. It's just, no, there's these like 7 or 8, and that's going to get you through. And just the way they evolve her works really well in this.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I like when they first introduce her, she like immediately calls out Kratos. She's like, "I know you're a god. I don't know what you're doing here, but like, I'll help that kid, but I'm not helping you."
Yeah. And then you see that same thing when he finds out that she's a god, going like, all right, fine, you can help Atreus, but I don't trust you. So you get this very big like butting heads, where it's just like, okay, she's this nice lady that's just trying to take care of Atreus, and then you find out she's a god, and then Kratos is like, no, I know you're screwed up. You're a god. Like, there's something wrong with you. And then seeing that evolve towards the ending is really cool.
Yeah, especially the turn at the end, because like once he gets in between her and Balder, that's when it all goes south. And it's like, oh wow, she is actually a Nordic god. She is one of the horrible people that they described throughout the entire game.
For sure. The other character I think that's just fun more than anything else is the head that you carry around on your belt. He's just there to tell stories.
Yeah, kind of. He's like Papa Mimir. He's like the grandpa. Like he's like the fun uncle.
That is a perfect way to describe him. Just like, what? Oh, we're doing this. All right, let's go. Good thing I can't die.
Yeah, and I kind of figured. I totally thought Mimir was just gonna be like, okay, you carried the head for like this like one part.
Yeah, it felt like one of those, just like, because you had a couple keys before that where it's just like, this is the key to open the door, and it's like, okay, this is God of War. Of course, the key to the next door is a head. Like, that makes sense. That fits God of War. But no, he just becomes a central character who sticks with you through the whole game and just riding in the boat, telling stories. Like, it's a really cool evolution of what you get with Kratos at the beginning, who's telling these stories to Atreus about like life and things like this.
Yeah.
And then as you see that relationship build, now we go, okay, we're going to introduce this new character, and he's just going to start telling these batshit crazy stories about Nordic gods and the world that you're in.
Yeah, I liked it. Actually, I liked him a lot as a character because I think he actually had a lot of quote unquote like, I guess he had boring exposition is not the right word, but some of the stories he tells are really effing complicated. So I'm glad he has little jokes in there
Yeah.
because it's like, what the hell is he talking about?
Oh yeah, there's so many that I tuned out, and then he'd say something like, wait, that got interesting all of a sudden. I don't remember what you were saying for the rest,
Yeah.
which I think goes to your fun uncle comment where it's like, oh yeah, like, yep, yep. Wait, hold on. I was tuning that out. You just said something. Wait a minute.
Yeah, like it's like, oh, he says something really crass. Okay, that's kind of funny, sort of thing. I think it's interesting because he's like a storyteller who's trying to get the player interested in Nordic mythology.
Yeah, he's the fun
yeah.
teacher. He's trying to teach you something, but he's just along for the ride and trying to have fun with you. But he wants you to learn a lesson.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, exactly. Well, the problem is he told these awesome stories. Like, oh shit, when am I gonna meet these guys?
2021.
2020, yeah, exactly.
So I guess moving on from characters just to some of the kind of the crazy moments, and I think the moment that will stick out in every single person who plays this game's mind is getting the blades.
Yeah. Damn.
That's one of those moments that it's tucked in the perfect moment because it's probably, a good halfway-ish through the story.
Yeah.
Somewhere around there. So it's getting to the point where you're going, you know what? Maybe I'm not going to see that stuff maybe we are kind of completely removed. And it's gotten just to the point where you're not going like, oh, but remember the Blades of Chaos. You're going, no, I like this axe. This axe is good. Like, this is a cool thing. And then you're like, wait a minute. I think I even texted you. I don't remember who reveals it to you. Like, that's like, I know what I need. Let's go home.
Yeah.
And I think I just texted you like, oh shit, I'm getting the blades, I think. Because I knew you were further than me at that point. And just, just that moment of just that anticipation of let's go home. And just that kind of plays again a little bit more with the ending, which we'll talk about in a second. Just that let's go home. I know what I need to get. And it's hinted at the beginning where it's like, okay, don't go down there. We know there's something down there. And as soon as he says go home, you're just like, oh, you get like the shakes, like, oh boy.
Real quick, is that right after the fight with the two brothers?
It's when Atreus gets sick, I think, or right after Atreus gets sick, which I think is the two brothers.
Because the part where Atreus gets sick, because like it's crazy, because like okay, like from that point where like you have Atreus getting sick to you getting the blades, it's such a long period of time because it is such a cool emotional roller coaster, like building that anticipation. Because right before that, that's when Atreus says, he like does his god like anger thing, and then like gets knocked out, and you're like, oh shit, Atreus is dead. So you're like having this huge emotional weight in the story, and then it does like so you're like way down, like in the dumps like Kratos, and you're worried, and that's when the anticipation starts to build and build and build and build and build. And it's like, oh fuck. I was so excited. My girlfriend was watching me play. And I was trying to explain to her how awesome like that scene was. Like as we're going through it, she's like, "This is kind of neat." I was like, "You have no idea how awesome this is."
You don't understand. You'll never understand.
Yeah, and then getting the blades and then like finding out that they're an actual weapon. They're not just some like side thing.
Yeah, because I think that was kind of my feeling like up until you were getting to that point where it starts getting hinted heavily that you're getting them is kind of like, you know what, maybe they'll show up. There'll be some weird end game thing where it'll like be like, oh, you beat the game, now play with Kratos Classic. Yeah. And you get them then. But just having them come in at that point and just it does change up combat tremendously. It makes you feel so different than playing with the axe, just the speed and just it fits perfectly. It still gives you kind of some of that same feeling you get in the old God of War games using them, but it still does fit this new over the shoulder camera gameplay style that they have here.
Yeah, they definitely. I like that they changed up some of the enemy encounters too. Where they'll throw more lighter enemies at you. Like they'll actually like swarms of enemies as opposed like usually just have like 1-on-2, 1-on-3 sort of thing with the axe. But this one they're like 1-on-5 because you have the range of the blades. It's like it's so satisfying. I was surprised how well implemented they were.
Getting to the other major moments here. So the ending. Ending kind of took place over a few different things. Obviously, getting to the end, scattering your wife's ashes was, I think, just a really cool emotional moment. The way that played out and zoomed over the land with the giants and everything, I think that was really cool. But obviously, the big reveal being Loki, being the major spoiler there. And I don't know how I feel about that because I feel like it was just kind of like it almost felt like throwaway at the end, like, oh yeah, by the way.
Really, you know what's funny? I really loved the whole ending. I especially love the tag on that it's Loki, because for I would say I think at the point when you finally realize you are going to go to like Yoakum or what's it called? What's it called?
Jotunheim,
Jotunheim.
something like that.
Yeah, it's like because it's right before the final boss, and like you're originally gonna get to Jotunheim, and then that final boss scene happens, and you kill Balder. Like I feel like you're feeling high. It's like yes, we're gonna go to Jotunheim, but then you kill Balder, and now Freya hates, and you're like, oh no. And then you're going to the land of the giants, and everything's dead, and you're like, oh no. And then they have that big script of like something bad is gonna happen in the future, like, oh no. And the final cherry on top is like all of these things that you have done, like to finally do like the one good thing in your life. And then at the end, they reveal it's like, oh no, his son is actually not a good person. Like no matter what happens here, his son is probably not going to grow up to be a good person. And I just thought it was so interesting because to me it was like such a downer ending that I really liked it because of that.
Huh? See, and I didn't take it that way because I think obviously you get that feeling of like, okay, Loki bad, like something bad's going to come from that.
Yeah,
you get that, but it was one of those things where it was like, oh yeah, they called me Loki, and it just felt like one of those like almost like throwaway lines.
yeah,
Just because it happened so subtly and just kind of out of nowhere. Like you didn't really expect that. Like it was just like, oh, this is Atreus. And again, maybe that's just me kind of going with the story more than anything else. But it did just kind of feel like, okay, yeah, he's Loki. Okay, what? Why? Why is he Loki now? Okay, wife was a giant, Loki giant god mix. Okay, I get the whole thing there, but it was just kind of one of those like, meh, okay, that didn't hit me. That didn't hit me, I think, nearly as hard as the Blades or nearly as hard as the Thor reveal at the end.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Just because I think Thor was like built up so much in this game that when you see Thor at the end when you go home,
Yeah.
it just has this crazy like, oh shit's going down. Like I was thinking like, sometimes you get those end bosses, like post game bosses where you just fight the baddest person you can imagine. And that's what that Thor thing felt like. Obviously just being a tease. Whereas the Loki thing was just kind of like oh, okay. I'm sure that's gonna end poorly in the next game, but we're done.
well that's the thing, is like to me I like it because it's because you feel like near the end of the game that everything is going to be okay with these two. It's like they'll go on more adventures. Not that anything necessarily bad is going to happen to them, but because the Freya thing, and then on top of it all, you just know that no matter what happens now, doesn't matter how good of friends they become, how good a father-son they become, no matter how much they've learned, it's all going to end in ruin. And that is such a good downer.
I guess I didn't really think about it in terms of the character thing. I just thought of it more as like main plot line. I'm like, okay, like yeah, but I guess if you think about it in terms of character, that is a good point. Just being like, yep, all that was for now. We're going back to Kratos had no compassion for this kid at the beginning, and based on the minor characteristics I know of Loki, essentially from Marvel stuff, he's going to have very little compassion for Kratos when he gets older. So it's almost going to be that it could end up being this nice switch when you get into the next God of War of like, okay, now we're starting, and Atreus is pretty much just sick of Kratos, and you almost get this flip of what you had in this game, which could be very interesting.
Yeah, and that's the thing I kind of like. That's the thing I was like kind of excited about and like also afraid about, is like seeing all this stuff that you built up for this entire game like erode, like the like knowing in the future it's going to erode away. I was just like, oh man, that just it hurt. It really stung. I was like, oh man. There's like a lot of stuff that like. I guess, yeah. I mean, that's kind of all I have to say about it. Also, the final area is just gorgeous too, man. Their art team is like insane.
There are some crazy, just tiny little rooms that you go into, and just things that seem really insignificant that just have a ton of detail. Just even some of those like broken down ships around the Lake of Nine are just really cool to kind of walk around some of the shipwrecks and everything.
Yeah.
Just everything done so well. And again, we didn't talk about it too much, but just the optional areas where there's these gigantic, like gorgeous, really well done optional areas that you'd never see if you're not bothering to do the side stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of cool because I was kind of playing like Assassin's Creed Origins at the same time. And Assassin's Creed, like the thing with Assassin's Creed is like if you do a side mission where they're like, ooh, there's a spooky noise in the cave, it might be demons. It's never demons. It's always just like a hyena or something like that. But in this one, like the spooky noise in the cave is actually something kind of cool. Or that thing off in the distance is kind of neat. Like they hit dragons in this game. Like that was an optional thing. Like what the fuck?
Yeah, just you fight one if you want to fight more dragons, because I don't know, why would you want to fight another dragon?
Yeah, exactly.
They're out there. Go find them. But yeah, I think you mentioned it before. I think this would be kind of a couple of the things that we kind of stuck out, and
Mhm.
I don't want to say as negatives because this game it is a great game, like we said at the
Yeah.
top. But just a couple of the points I think that kind of like soured it a bit.
Mhm.
You mentioned the MacGuffin at the beginning of the game, and or at the
Ugh.
beginning of this video, and I think there was a point. I can't remember exactly where it was, but it would have been about 3 or 4 hours before the beginning where there was another thing where it's like, all right, we're here, and you get there, and it was when you had to get the eye, the second eye for
Oh, for Mimir. Oh, yeah,
yes,
that's way near the end. That's like
yeah,
way near the end.
right,
Yeah.
like when you get to that where you get that second eye from Mimir, and all I could think about is like, okay, so we have to do another thing where I have to go get another random object to get through the same door that I've
Yeah.
tried to get through 6 times. And I think for me, it started just feeling like fetch quests at the end. Like, oh,
Yeah.
you got this. You're a half step closer. Now go on this whole other place to get one more half step closer. And it felt like I was just taking half steps for the last couple hours of the game, for the main storyline at least. And
Yeah.
I think it's a very interesting tactic to go with in a game this big, just because I felt like there was so much optional stuff. There's so much stuff you can do.
Yeah.
To just keep putting that as kind of your next step in the main storyline felt really like it was like, okay, I get it. You want me to go find more stuff.
Yeah.
Let's get to the ending now. I want to get up that mountain.
Yeah, the thing that like really hurts about it too is like, I think that could work in a shorter game, but you just know that like once you've like I think they do that like 3 or 4 times because the first time they do it is when you get to the top of the mountain, and then it's like, oh no, this is actually, you need to go to a different peak. It's like, all right, fine. And then you get like the first thing and collect the second thing and the third thing and the fourth thing and this and that and this and that. I think it's something that could work for a shorter game, but just because it's so long, you just know that it's like crap to get the next thing's gonna be like 5 more hours or 6 more hours or whatever it's gonna be, or 3 more hours or whatever it's gonna be. It's gonna be a long time, before you get that next thing. It is funny though. I feel like every time they did something like that, they did sort of like an apology of having a really cool scene after they realized like because when they break the gates to Jotunheim or whatever, they have that cool baller thing where it like knocks you into hell, which is most insane thing I've ever seen in a game.
Oh yeah, the dragon when you're flying on the dragon, and that scene where you're going from the mountain to hell and just fight. Yeah, oh yeah, so cool.
Yeah, and then the next time they do that is with the Mimir and the two eyes. That's when you get to go inside the snake, which is also a pretty cool scene.
Yeah,
but it does definitely feel after a while. It's like, come on, guys.
I've put my 15, 20 hours in. Like I don't need one more fetch quest. If I want to do my one more thing, like I'll go talk to a spirit and go get his stuff for him. Like it just feels like it's this unnecessary drag at the end. And I think in a game that's built so much on just this emotional story, this pacing out, really, really well done up until that point, it just feels like this like one. Wait, we just want to keep you here for another hour. We just want you engrossed for one more hour, and it just feels like it's like, okay, I'm getting these emotional moments, and now I have to wait for the next one, even though I did the thing. I did what you told me to do.
Yeah, it's so weird too because I the one thing I was thinking about like with this whole thing is like the going to the mountain. Like your first thing is to go to the highest peak in Midgar or wherever you are, and you can see it at all times. It's so cool seeing that goal off in the distance. Like no matter where you are, you can see the peak of the mountain, and you know you're getting closer and closer and closer and closer.
Oh yeah.
And then when they said it's Jotunheim, it's like, okay, now you've totally lost that cool visual aspect.
But I think that's like one of the first times where you start going to. Is that the first time you go to another realm after you get to the peak, or do you go to the other one first? I don't remember.
No, because you had to go to Elfworld to get past the
That's
smoke.
right. That's right, you did. So I mean, even if you would have had that, where you get to that first peak, and then it's like, oh yeah, you're right, you're in the highest peak in Midgard, but you can travel to other realms.
Yeah,
and then getting that hook there, and I just feel like it was just one of those things where. You could have flipped some of those hooks a little bit and maybe put the realm thing being next. Like, oh, you can see it there, but to get there, you need to go through these other realms. Instead of just being
exactly.
like, oh, yeah, you know how you've been to other realms? Sorry, there's bigger mountains in other realms, so why don't you go check some of those out?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
It just, and I think that's that one thing where there are cool things in games where you've got that visual representation of your goal. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like that feeling is so much stronger when you've got that versus the feeling of like, oh, I'm just looking for keys.
Yeah, and it changes from that cool visual thing to searching for keys.
Yeah, and I think kind of that feeling of just always hoping for something, I think really encapsulates a lot of this games. I know this is one of the major things that you kind of kept coming back to, and you've mentioned it a couple times here.
Yeah.
of just being teased so much about
Oh
this
god.
cool stuff, and
Yeah.
just always getting, whether it's stories, whether it's some of the lore you find around, whether it's what characters are saying. There's always this hint of like, oh my god, there's something going to be something cool from the moment you get to the Lake of Nine and you see the world serpent, and that one pays off, and then you see the big Thor statue, and you hear these cool stories of like this crazy Nordic gods and the crazy things that are happening,
Yeah.
and it never pays off.
Yeah. It just kind of feels like you can just feel them just like pouring the concrete for a foundation of a new house of God of War. Like it's all over the place. Like they had this huge foundation they can build off on X, Y, and Z, but it just feels like they're pouring concrete after a while. Like,
Yeah, which, well, I don't think it gets quite that bad, because I do think a lot of it is interesting. And I do think a
Yeah.
lot of this game, and we talked about this in our first impressions, is to kind of give you, the player, a picture of what Nordic mythology is.
Yeah.
And I do think without building that in this game, just throwing you into, I think they could throw you into the Greek mythology a little bit more, because especially, American culture and things like that, we've been exposed to that through different film franchises, TV shows, stories throughout the years. Whereas I feel like Nordic mythology doesn't quite have that consensus popular knowledge.
Yeah.
And I really do feel like you did need to build that. If you just threw me in and like, again, like when Baldur showed up at your house, my first thought was, oh, it's Loki, because the like 3 Greek gods I know are Odin, Thor, and Loki, and it wasn't Odin and Thor. So I do think that groundwork needed to be laid, but it does get to the point where there's somewhere it's just, by the end, you're just going like, oh, but that's what I want right now.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, for sure. Because like they definitely, because like you're saying, I think that's actually really, yeah, that makes sense. I didn't think about it like that, but yeah, they do spend a lot of time. Like, I don't think that final scene where you meet Thor, it's like in this world, Thor is a bad guy, and that's a hard thing to teach. And in this one,
but
they teach you very well that Thor is a very bad guy. They teach you that Odin is a very bad guy. And then it definitely feels though like, okay, I've learned that these are bad guys. But it is interesting. They never actually set up any direct conflict between you and those big bad guys yet. But you can just feel it like simmering.
Yeah, and you can feel it coming. And again, I think that's some part of that Loki tease, where knowing the relationship between Loki and some of the other gods that I think is more popular knowledge thanks to the Thor movies.
Yeah.
You know that he's not Odin and Thor's favorite, and I don't know how deep that actually goes in real Norse mythology. But here you kind of get that again. I just think like, okay, maybe that sets it up somehow, but you definitely get this feeling that nobody is really happy you're there.
Yeah.
And the people who are there are scary and crazy.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
And they don't want you there. And I think that's the biggest tease of just like, even if the next game is just like, Kratos, why the hell are you here? And I think that's the other tease I think that really gets me, is like, I still want to know, why is he here? Like, you never get anything close to payoff for that. No hints, no anything. Like,
I think no. I don't. Okay, I'd say that they definitely don't directly say it, but it's like clearly just trying to get as far the f away from Greece as he possibly could to go hide in the woods.
But how does that work? How is there a connection? Like, how are the Greek gods not aware of the Nordic gods? If I can just walk through the woods enough and get to, oh, now I'm in Norse mythology. You know what I mean? Like,
no, I'd say they definitely contextualize. Like, they definitely indicate that, like, geographically, all the gods are definitely active in their different areas. Like they kind of show the Japanese religions, the Egyptian religions, the this religions, the that religion. I mean, there is a whole unspoken story of how I got that cool ass shield. Like, I don't know where that came from.
Yeah, but well, again, and that's the thing is like, that's the stuff that like as a player I'm super interested in now. It's that's the payoff that I didn't get here. The 2 payoffs that I want in the next game are, where the hell did Kratos come from, and why can't I fight these gods now?
Oh, I think the opening fight of the next game is going to be the Thor fight. Like, I think that's going to be
I could very easily see him doing something similar to that, where you just like kick the shit out of Thor in the opening, and then Thor comes back at the end, and you do kind of that loop like you did with Baldur in this one.
Oh no, I think Thor is going to put Kratos into a coma, and then you're Atreus for like most of the game.
Ooh. Yeah. Pull a Metal Gear Solid 2 where you want to play a 100%. Snake, and then they're like halfway, they're like, haha, gotcha, you're not Snake anymore. I was kind of waiting for that scene, to be honest, in this. Like,
oh yeah.
at some
Especially
point
because they
you're
talked about
making,
the like time and stuff. I thought he was going to go through a light thing and come back, and Atreus was like now 20 or something like that.
yeah, the point where he was like, oh, you don't know how long you've been gone. Like, just like 2 minutes, dude, calm your ass down.
Yeah, he's like, no, it's been a really long time, and your heart hurts. Um, yeah, I guess the thing I want is like, I mean, yeah, I finally want to do the Thor and Odin. I think for at least one of those two characters, um, they definitely can't wait on it anymore. Like they've definitely built up this whole game for you, like at least it's saying how badass these two guys are for you to fight them. But the one thing I want at some point for them to introduce additional mythology and an interaction between the two, between like Nordic and whoever else is nearby. Like I just want more than anything really. It's like just I want him to just like get flung through a portal for like a split second, and you see Anubis, who's like, who's that? And then it goes through another portal and you're back in Nordic. Like, I just want to see some other god.
So in a game where you're complaining about too many teases, you want another tease.
I just want to see him. I just want to see it. Like, well, no, the thing with Thor is like, at least you got to see Thor.
True. Yes.
And like, I felt even with the Thor thing, like, it's like, yeah, they teased it, but I was like, that was good. They showed him at least. They definitely showed him. Like, you get to fight him. They showed him though.
It was enough to know that it's coming.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily get that same tease of like you're going to go fight Anubis or you're going to go to whatever other mythology shows up.
Yeah.
It's that nice tease of like, here's Thor. We are getting there. You will have this.
Yeah, exactly.
Versus the like, this exists.
Yeah, and it definitely felt like here's this is like God of War 4, 5 or whatever it's gonna be. It's gonna be like way off, but like they're definitely like laying the groundwork for like there's other mythologies, but we're not sure we're gonna get there. I want that Thor tease for God of War 2, quote unquote. I want that Thor tease to be the tease of like Egyptian gods or Mayan gods or some other type of like mythos thing. That's all I want.
And
I just want to see
God of War 6, 3, whatever it would be then, is just Kratos just running through every mythology on Earth.
Yes.
Killing the Odin or the Zeus of every single mythology that's ever existed, and it's just I am the god of gods at the end.
Yeah, it's just well, the thing that's kind of interesting about this one is just like Kratos just wants to be left alone, and like fate or whatever else is just not leaving him alone. It's kind of interesting because it actually feels like his wife may have like definitely used him.
Oh, for sure.
Which actually makes sense of like, why would anybody but want to be his wife? And like, oh, if you thought you were fulfilling some great prophecy, that makes sense.
Yep, which is exactly what she was doing. So I don't know, it'll be interesting to see how she even plays into the next one now, having a little bit more realization of how she was impacting this story. So
yeah,
I don't know. There's a lot to this game. This was much longer than we never really ever talk about anything. So I think that shows some excitement and enthusiasm about this game, and some excitement about where this series is going to go.
Oh yeah.
But we are Workforce Gaming. You can follow us on Twitter at Workforce Gaming. Subscribe to us on YouTube or wherever else you may be listening, and we will see you later.
Bye.